Hello, this is Peter Morcey from the Stockbury Dark. Working closely with my co-host Klaus Almian from Stockholm, Sweden, we plan on bringing you truly dark stories from one side of the world to the other. We have been busy interviewing many of our friends from our world and subculture, stories dealing mainly with the occult, paranormal, and other dark topics. We really hope you enjoy these episodes as much as we do. What started as a spark from the mind of Klaus has now certainly ignited a huge firestorm of stories that will surely keep you up at night. The Stockbury Dark can be found on iTunes Podcasts, on our Facebook page, the official Stockbury Dark, Instagram, and Twitter, as well as our website, thestockburydark.com. We can be reached at thestockburydark@gmail.com. Please help us spread the word, and thank you for listening. This episode of the Stockbury Dark is brought to you by the Black Market Kitchen. The Black Market Kitchen is a meal service providing you with delicious, healthy, and clean meals. Do you live a busy life and don't have the time to cook, or do you just prefer the convenience of having your meals prepared? With a range of options to suit many tastes and dietary preferences, Black Market Kitchen caters to a wide variety of folks. Perhaps you want to lose weight, eat less processed and packaged foods, and or just improve your overall health. At Black Market Kitchen, they have developed an understanding of the types of foods athletes and active individuals need to fuel their daily activities. They offer vegetarian, paleo, and ketogenic compliant options in addition to their regular clean meals. The gourmet menu, consisting of perfectly sized portions, is updated weekly, providing customers with something new and delicious each week. It is their mission to make achieving your nutrition goals easier. No matter what your sport or diet, Black Market Kitchen wants to help you become the best version of yourself. Streamline your life and order up your meals. Black Market Kitchen offers statewide door-to-door delivery in Connecticut for a $25 fee. If you're local to the greater Waterbury area, stop in and try a fresh juice, smoothie, protein shake, or bulletproof coffee, and grab a few meals from the cooler. They have tons of healthy snacks to choose from, including their house-made keto bars, as well as raw and vegan options as well. Visit their website at theblackmarketkitchen.com. Sign up for the mailing list and have the weekly menu delivered to your inbox. Follow them on Facebook and Instagram at the Black Market Kitchen. Hello, welcome to the first episode of the Stockbury Dark. My name is Peter Morcey.
And I am Klaus from a band called Shipwrecked, and we have the whole Atlantic Ocean in between us. And this is the first time you're listening to us, to the Stockbury Dark.
This is an idea that Klaus had a while ago, and it's actually been a few months in the works right now.
It's been more than a few months.
Yeah, I think time's been flying, but it's been a while, and it's finally coming together now. And the whole premise of the Stockbury Dark would be Klaus and I interviewing people from our world, our music scene, our subcultures, and we're not going to give you the same day-to-day kind of like boring interviews where we're going to talk about music and your influences and everything. We are going to be speaking more about the experiences of the people we're interviewing that were supernatural or occult in nature, or some really dark topics, and give everyone some really, really good stories to listen to that are a bit above the norm.
And I mean, also to put it this way, we have not a theory. It's not a theory. It's an absolute fact that us two, but also the people that we have associated ourselves with. But I would take it as far as to say, like, a lot of the bands that we've been into from the early 80s and forward are bands that if not the band in itself, then at least its members had a similar interest in this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And we see, I would go as far as to say that we see a thread from decade to decade where these things, the occult or dark things or the paranormal or whatever you want to call it, whatever you want to label it, has been there, and there has been a presence of it in the subcultures that we live and the subcultures that we come from.
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree?
Yeah, I definitely would. There's that underlying current with a lot of people that we know that are involved with that have these stories. And as far back as I can remember, I was always interested in hearing them from people, and I'm glad right now we have the platform to be able to do that. I think
and
we're
and
gonna have,
and to be able to share,
yeah,
share it too. I mean, some of these stories are stories, and I wouldn't say folklore, but because it comes from people that we know or friends of friends, but stories that we have stumbled across that a lot of people like us and a lot of people that are into the stuff that we're into kind of deserve to hear as well.
hmm that's right. So we decided, before we start getting into full interviews with people besides us, the first two episodes will basically be about Klaas and I and our experiences. So this one we're going to focus mainly on experiences I've had with sleep paralysis and out of body experiences. We know which started with me in my late teens and has increased dramatically over the years. I'm 46 now, and I'm still, 2-3 times a week. I'm still dealing with these types of things, and
And one would think that it's something that would go away with age, but in your case, it's the opposite.
yeah, yeah, it's definitely increased dramatically over the years, and it's nothing that I'm afraid of anymore. But I would really like to get a full night's sleep sometimes.
Should we start with you basically describing the basics of what it is?
Yeah,
Not just what it is from a medical point of view, almost, so like how people describe it, and then we'll jump into you telling us about how it all started for
yeah. I
Blue
mean,
Boys.
definitely. With sleep paralysis, a majority of the people that experience this is almost like a pressure, a weight on your body as you are starting to fall into a deep sleep, um, and you're mostly conscious. Some say semi-conscious. Sometimes you feel fully conscious. Your eyes are open, and your breathing starts becoming shorter and shorter because it feels like your breath is being taken away, and there's this heavy feeling, this pressure on you, and you cannot move. And it's a true paralysis. And during this time, especially if you're not used to this, there's this deep feeling of like fright and dread of like what's going on with my body. Why can't I move? Why can I see everything that is happening around me, but I can't seem to sit up and get out of this? And you start trying to like express yourself. You start trying to speak, and your speaking turns into screaming sometimes, and you feel like you're trapped in there for what seems like hours, when really only minutes can be passing.
And
Um,
also, from what I understand, you feel that you're fucking wide awake yourself.
Wide awake,
Yeah.
and a lot of people also feel during while this is happening, there's a presence in the room or wherever you're sleeping. There's someone in the corner watching you, or there's someone next to you, or someone's talking to you, or someone is literally draining the life from you on top of your chest. There's it. It's a very, very could be a very terrifying experience for a lot of people, and I know it was for me. And even now, after years of experiencing this, I still have some fear and fright with it because I feel like I can be locked in this state forever and
Yeah.
not escape it, you know.
Or not, or the opposite, not being able to get back in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true too. Because there's times that I've tried to induce it myself because I've gotten so curious with it of where I can go with it, you know, and that's another story altogether. But
Yeah.
it's a it's a very, I don't want to say it's magical, but it's otherworldly, I guess, is what I'd say it is.
Yeah.
It's another
So
thing I could describe.
so once upon a time, you were how old?
When the first time this happened,
Yeah.
I want to say around 19 years old, and I was at my mother's house sleeping. Um, I was it was probably around 2 or 3 in the morning. My girlfriend at the time was staying there, and she was in bed with me. And I remember I was about to fall asleep. I was laying there. My eyes were wide open. I was trying to communicate with her, and nothing was coming out of my mouth. And then now I'm trying to sit up, and I can't move, and I had no idea what was going on. It was scary. I thought there was a real problem with me, and if minutes have passed, and I'm screaming, but the screams are obviously never coming out, and I see her laying next to me sleeping, and she's not budging. She's not flinching at all. It's like, how could she not hear me? How could she not know what was going on? And maybe a few more minutes passed, and eventually the screams came out of my mouth, and I started yelling at the top of my lungs. I sat up in bed. I turned the lights on. I had no idea what just happened, and I was like, why didn't you wake me? Why didn't you get up and help me? And she's like, what are you talking about? You know, she didn't understand what was going on.
Yeah.
I was like, I've been laying here unable to move forever. And I was scared. I was terrified, you know, almost in tears because I've never felt anything like this.
No,
I
I
never
mean,
knew what
you.
I
There's a good chance that you thought that you were gonna fucking die.
yeah, I really did, you know, and this was way before like anything I ever heard about sleep paralysis or anything like that. And I couldn't go type it in on the internet and or on Google and ask, you know, what was this? You know, it was so bizarre, this feeling. And I remember we just talked about it for the next couple of days and really had no answers. And you know, time passed and it didn't happen to me for a while, maybe not for another 2 years. And then it happened again. I
And
was living
then
in,
you were in your early 20s, right?
yeah, I was probably like 22, 21, 22, maybe 23. I'm not exactly sure. You know, I didn't really document it because I didn't think it was going to become like such a major part of my life. And I remember the second time it happened, I was at my a house I was living in. I was renting, and my friends were over, and it was like, you know, getting late in the evening. I think I nodded off on the couch, and it happened again in a room full of like 4 or 5 of my friends. You know, they were sitting around watching television. You know, the same thing. You know, my eyes were open. I was watching everyone talking, having a great time. TV was on. I heard everything that was going on, and I was stuck there. And I was sitting up on a couch, but you know, and nodding off. And same thing happened. Eventually, I broke free of it. You know, with all the strength you have, sometimes it takes to like just force yourself through it. Like you're muscling through it, and boom, same thing, screaming out loud. And now I'm in a room with 4 or 5 guys, and they have no idea what's going on. And then I,
What do you think? How would you describe that? Would you describe it as breaking out of it so you wake up, or breaking out
yes,
of
I
it,
was trying to
yeah,
free myself from it. It felt, you know, it literally feels like you're under someone has control over you. And this is before I thought even there was like an entity around me or it was just a complete state of like paralysis. It's nothing like you've ever experienced. I never felt anything like supernatural with it yet. Um, but it was just something blocking me when I was fully aware and conscious of getting up.
at the time then, since it had only happened one time prior to this,
Hmm.
did you connect the two? Like fuck, it's back, or
Yeah, almost, because it was a while since the first time, and I'd already, I think, forgot about it the first time. I stopped talking about it. Years had passed, and then when it happened again, immediately I was like, I remember this. I remember this happening to me, and now I was more interested and curious of why this is happening. Um, Around the same time, I was studying classical music, believe it or not, and I had a voice teacher who I would work with about an hour from me, and I would study at her home, and sometimes I would stay there on the weekends where we'd have full weekend sessions. And the third time this happened,
tell us a little bit about her because she was slightly older, right?
yeah, she was at the time she was probably about 25 to 30 years older than me.
And she took or she had private lessons in her home,
Yeah, she was.
which was an old house.
No, it was. I don't think it was an old house with any history like that. It was probably maybe 50 years old. The
Okay.
home. Um, yeah, but she was like a actually pretty famous classical singer for her time, and she went into lessons and teaching. Private teaching for students, and I was
Yeah.
one of her students. And when I would stay there on the weekends, it was basically consisting of just my lessons and hours a day of practice with her. And the third time this happened is when things started getting a little bit different. Um, I was there on a weekend and sleeping in my bedroom. I woke up. I remember specifically. I woke up. I looked at the clock, and it was 3 a.m. right on the dot. And
Which is exactly the same time as it had happened 2 times prior.
those other times were
Like,
the first time was definitely around that time. The second time, I'm not really sure.
okay,
But as we get farther into this, it's almost like a reoccurring theme around that time, which people always say is the devil's hour. The witching hour was midnight, and 3 a.m. was the devil's hour,
yeah.
which was, I'm not sure how much I can back that up, but it's really strange that a lot of these occurrences always happen at that time.
Here we call it the hours of the wolf. I think that's from like 1 in the morning till 3 in the morning or three
Uh
thirty
huh.
in the morning. Yeah, we
Yeah,
call
and
it the hours of the wolf.
they always said those were the hours where your body was most susceptible to either possession, or a weakness for something to inhabit your body or take it over. That's what I've always read about in my readings. Might be similar there. Um, there's probably some truth to it because that's when you're usually in a deep REM sleep
Yes.
for most people. So, anyways, the first next strange thing that happened to me, I was at my teacher's home. I was sleeping. I remember I woke up at 3 a.m. or so, and the room was illuminated and like it was bathed in this golden light. No lights were on in the house. It was obviously dark outside, and it was just a warm golden glow in this room, and it didn't frighten me. It felt almost normal. I was like, "What?" I sat up. I looked around. I saw everything like illuminated, and I think I just sat there like looking around for a few minutes and went back to bed because there was nothing strange. It was almost like a comforting feeling, and I didn't understand it, but I was maybe in a half sleep and just went back to bed. Didn't think nothing of it. Didn't even bring it up the next day. I don't even think I thought of it. Um, the following weekend, I was there studying again. Now this time, I remember I wake up around the same time, 3 a.m. Um, and the lights are on. I think I fell asleep with the lights on this time. And I remember I was sitting on the edge of the bed, and I was trying to stand up, and I'm pressing my hands, palms down onto the mattress. I'm trying to push my body up, and for some reason I can't stand. And I was like thinking, this is the strangest thing. Why can I not move? Why can't I stand up? I've never felt anything like this. So as I'm pushing myself to stand, I remember I looked over to the right of my shoulder, and there's the length of the bed, and I see my legs laying the full length of the bed, my feet down by the headboard, the baseboard of the bed, and I was like, "This is not right." And I pushed with all my strength, and I stood up straight. And as soon as I stood up straight, I sat up in bed. It was almost like there were two bodies there, one trying to escape, and then my body, my physical form, in the bed. So now I'm sitting up, breathing heavy. I was like, "This is mind blowing to me. I've never thought of an out of body experience in my life." It seemed like this was like the gateway to actually leaving my body, and it scared the hell out of me because, like I said, who does that happen to? It never happened to me. I couldn't sleep much for the rest of the night. It was kind of like a really surreal experience. And I remember I went down in the morning for breakfast. My teacher was down there. Her name was Yana. And I said, "Yana, I had some very strange experience last night." And I proceeded to tell her. And she had a little, kind of almost like a half smirk on her face. And then I said, "You know what? The week before, I also had this other experience." And I told her about the light in the room.
Yeah.
And she's like, "It's very strange that you say that. I've had guests that have stayed in that spare bedroom and relayed similar types of stories to me." And I was like, "Really? What happened with them?" She's like, "Same things. They saw this golden light in this room. They had strange sleep. Being awoken by noises." And she said, previously to us buying this home, her and her husband, a couple lived there with their child, and the child was in the room across the hall from mine. And I think that the child passed away at a very early age in a crib death. And she was convinced the spirit of the child was still in the house. She said she's been in the other bedroom and she would feel cold spots where the child's crib used to be. And she was a very religious Christian woman, but she was also a bit new agey and spiritual in a lot of ways too, and open to like things like this. And she truly believed, there was some essence or form that was still inhabiting that part of the house.
This time you saw a form of glow or something
Right.
almost golden in it.
Mm-hmm.
The times that it happened prior to this, had you experienced anything else in regards to the surroundings?
No.
Like darkness or like
No.
when your friends were in the room that they looked different or something like that?
No. Everything seemed. The first two times was just straight paralysis, nothing else. No feeling of real like dread or of some presence or anything dark or anything like that. No feelings whatsoever. And then the next at her home, like what I said with the glow, was just almost like a comforting feeling. I didn't think much about it. Wasn't scared. And then with the out of body the next week, same thing. It was frightening to me, but not in a dark way. Just like something new that I've never experienced. And then that was about it for a while. Maybe a couple years later is when I purchased a home pretty close to where I live now.
And now you're pushing. Now you're almost pushing 30, or
years have passed. I think I'm close to 30 right now. When I bought this home, and it was an older home.
Let's tell us a little bit about the area. The area where it was located and the surroundings.
It's in Waterbury, Connecticut. It's in a neighborhood that was called Bunker Hill. A nice neighborhood. A lot of older homes in the area. This home in particular was much older than the homes around there. I think at one point my home there and the one across the street were the only two on the hill. Their house was from 1902 and this one was from 1913.
Yeah.
They were two kind of grand, like one family homes. But later on, probably in the 70s, mine was converted into a 2-family house. And it was home to a lot of different renters, from probably the 70s and 80s on until I purchased this place.
But there was quite a lot of work being done on it.
Well, when I bought it, the house was in a state of disrepair at the time. That was all I can afford, and it was a place. I was like, all right, I'm going to invest my money in this. I can get this home for a good price. I jumped headfirst into like a project with it. 2 weeks after purchasing it, this whole house was gutted. And I've never done anything like this in my life. I'm not I'm not mechanical. I'm not great with construction. I'm good at demolishing though.
Yeah, you're good at breaking
And,
things.
and I dismantled this whole house literally with a hammer. I'm not even joking. With a
I'm not.
hammer, I took this whole house apart with a hammer, and a couple of my friends would help here and there. So months passed by. Now I'm starting to slowly build it. We're putting in all new walls, all new windows, a new roof, new sidewalks, anything you can think of. I did to this house, and now months have passed, and I'm ready to move in. There's 3 floors to the house. The first floor would be where I would rent out, and I lived on the second and third. The second had it's like an apartment-sized floor, and then the third was an attic, which I converted into a master bedroom, and it was beautiful. So, anyways, it's about a day or two before I start really living there. I started moving the furniture in.
Yeah.
It's maybe about midnight, a little bit after. I'm sitting down on the couch. I just moved in. I'm by myself, and I'm taking it all in. I was like, I can't believe I accomplished this after all this time. I put this whole house together. It was a great feeling of accomplishment.
Yeah.
As I'm thinking that, I'm looking straight down this long hallway that led to the bedroom.
Basically,
on the second floor.
you were filled with joy at a time.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. It's a big deal to me. Doing something like this.
Yeah, for any man.
And as I'm sitting there, basking in my glory, I see like this shadowy kind of dark, almost human-like shape scurrying from the end of the hallway towards me. And when I say scurried, it almost moved mechanically, like a spider. It was like I could see the legs and the torso, but then they had almost like these spidery type of arms. And I don't know if it was like the lighting from outside and like a shadow or in a car pulling up and like the branches of a tree, cast onto the wall. But at that moment, it did not look anything like that. This was like something very bizarre, and it made its way towards me, and it maybe ran 20 feet down this hallway, right to where the hallway would end, and it just disappeared.
But at like a slow pace.
Well, it seemed fast to me, but it took a long time to get there. And like I said, it was like like this crawling mechanical kind of like way of moving.
Almost like something is broken, but it's still forward.
And they've duplicated that type of movement in like a lot of current horror movies now, but at that time I've never seen anything like that. And I sat there not believing what I just saw on the couch, and probably another 30 seconds went by. I kind of rubbed my eyes and shook my head. I stood up and I walked out of the house really slow. I got out onto the back deck, and then I ran to my car. Because then once I hit the outside, I was like, that wasn't right. Something's wrong here. Something feels really different in this house. And previously, I never stayed there late at night. I never felt anything like that.
Did you feel yourself like freezing, or did the sense of like?
I think I gave myself a chill.
Fight or flight come?
Yeah, at first I was like kind of in shock. So I moved really slow until I got outside, and then I put a real big scare into myself, and I ran to my car, and I drove away.
Do you remember where we went?
In between this home and the house I rented, I was staying at my mother's house for like a couple months. So I went back to her house and didn't speak about it. Just was really, really kind of scared.
You didn't tell anyone?
No, I don't think I did. I mean, I'm a little cloudy on that. I might have told my wife obviously it was before we were married. I think I might have told her like a week later. But at that time, I didn't say anything. Didn't say, it's not something you really talk about um, without getting worried about what people are going to think of you when you tell them you saw an apparition or a ghost or
Yeah, and here we are.
full grown men running out of homes.
Yeah,
and,
yeah,
so a day or two passed. I started moving in the rest of my things, and the neighbors across the street, who I'm good friends with now, a married couple, were talking to me. I'm meeting them. They were saying, they were happy I bought the house and I redid it, and they were happy how nice it looked. And then they asked me if I knew what happened at the house previously before I bought it. And I was like, excuse me? And they said, do you know what happened to the previous tenant who was living there? And I said, no. What happened to the previous tenant? And they said, well, he was I forget his name to tell you the truth. They said he was a nice man. He was a Vietnam War veteran. Everyone really liked him, but he was a depressed man, and he committed suicide in the front bedroom of the second floor. And I was like, no, I don't know if the realtor was obligated to tell me that or what, but I did not know what had happened there. And that's when I told them what happened, and their jaws kind of dropped.
yeah.
But they didn't think it was unbelievable. They really thought it might have been the previous owner or a tenant that lived there. But we never really spoke much about it since then, myself and them. But as I moved into the house, that's when my paralysis came back, and now it started becoming more frequent. I moved up onto the third floor, which was a wide open old attic. It was a master bedroom. And that's when it kicked into overdrive, like almost immediately from moving in there. I would have nights where I just started with sleep paralysis, being stuck, eyes open, not being able to escape it. And it graduated to feelings of like, is someone watching me? Is there someone in the corner looking at me? People look like they were crouched in the corner. Are my eyes playing tricks on me?
Which kind of brings us back to the first time it happened in this house. Did
Uh-huh.
that silhouette or the thing or whatever we should call it, did it appear again?
Uh, Other types did. It didn't look the same as before, and these were things I still thought my mind was playing tricks on me
Yeah.
with. Did it look like an old hag in the corner crouching down, like laughing at me and pointing at me? Because those were things I was seeing in the middle of the night, like some dark womanly figure
Yeah.
that was just there. And I would close my eyes, I would open them again, and it was still there. And I would literally, 30 years old, pulling the covers over my head, wishing it to disappear. And the next thing that started happening was I would hear voices being whispered in my ear during my sleep, where I would feel almost like someone was crawling into the covers next to me in my bed and trying to communicate with me. And they were very inaudible words, but it was a human voice whispering, and I could never make out the actual words. And that started putting a pretty good fright into me. So next is I started telling my mom, of all people, what was going on. And we have a friend of the family who is a priest. His name is Father Vito, and he's a very old school Italian priest. And my mother told him, he called me up. He's like, Peter, don't you worry. I'll come take care of it. So next thing you know, I have a priest in my house, and he's performing his own sort of, I don't know if it's a true exorcism, but he was doing his blessings, and he traveled around the whole house with incense and these rosary beads that were blessed by the Pope. And I'm not a really firm believer in a lot of religion, but it almost made me feel good that he was doing something like that. Maybe it would relieve some of the feelings that I had.
Yeah, I guess it's a form of, you feel that someone is giving you a shield of sorts.
Mm-hmm. You're right, and that's what it was, and I
Yeah.
felt good for a little while, but it didn't stop, and it also seemed like it spread through the house now because my friends were living downstairs.
Yeah, I was just gonna get to that. Were you staying in the house by yourself during this whole time? Or you?
Sometimes,
Yeah.
but this is right when I started dating Shannon, who eventually moved fully into the house. And I also had friends who were renting downstairs, the first floor. And now during this time, I'm in bands. I sing for the band 100 Demons. We were on tour a lot during this time, and I would be leaving sometimes 40 days straight
Yeah.
of touring in Europe or across the country. And I would now be getting calls from my tenants downstairs. It was my friend Larry who was living down there, and he'd say, "Pete, are you home?" And I'm like,
Yeah.
"No, I'm on tour. You know that. Why?" He's like, "You're not home right now." And I said, "No, I'm not home. I'm in California or I'm in Germany or whatever." And he said, "Well, something or someone is running around upstairs and it's keeping me up all night, and I don't understand." And I said, "Larry, listen, I'm not there. Go upstairs and check." I think he had the key. And he'd go up there and he'd see nothing, but he'd always felt like there was something in there. And I remember specifically one time he called me. He's like, another time, he said, "Peter, are you home?" And I said, "No, I'm in wherever." And he said, "I just pulled up home, and every light in the house is on, from the first floor to the third floor, and all the windows are open.
Yeah.
Now it's the middle of the winter." I said, "What do you mean the windows are open? This is insane." He said, "Every window in the house is open." And I said, "Well, either someone's playing tricks with us or something's really bad is going on in this
Yeah.
house." So he went in, did his thing. He shut the windows down, closed up. And over the years, I've had guests that stayed with me at this house who would stay in the spare bedroom on the second floor, and they would feel things. They would have terrible sleep. They would have terrible nightmares. They would have their own sorts of sleep paralysis. Some of the people who stayed there said they've seen things or felt things in that room. Um,
Good friends. For
yes.
the both of us, we could add here.
What was that?
Yeah, I said good friends for the both of us. We could add here. Like
Yeah.
it's people we both know that
Yep.
experienced weird things there.
Excuse me. Um, over the years, Max Morton lived in this house
Yeah.
after I moved out.
Yeah.
Him and his girlfriend Alessandra always felt something in that spare bedroom. I remember Dre, who plays in the band Donnybrook, would come out of that room saying something was going on in there. A lot of people felt things, but no real concrete descriptions of a ghost. It was always more of like a feeling or a darkness or
Something vague.
yeah.
Something
But
dark.
when you started hearing it from more than one person, then you got a list of about 10 people telling you. You wonder what's really going on in this place.
Yeah.
Um, Eventually, I bought another home, which was pretty close to that home, and it was about a half mile or more away from this home. Moved up the street, and I wondered if whatever was going on was going to stop or follow me there. And
Because
I
at this point you had to you at this point, despite your history, there was a connection between the house and what was going on with you when you were sleeping, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yes, definitely, definitely. And lo and behold, once I moved into my new place, it really took off again, and it's never stopped. I've been here for about 6 years now, maybe longer, give or take a few months, and I think on average of 3 nights a week, I'm going through this sleep paralysis and kind of these other occurrences that have happened. I said earlier, in this other home, I would feel like a presence. I would hear voices. I would feel someone next to me, someone talking to me. Could never make it out. And as I moved into this new home and started having these new experiences, it graduated to a lot of other things where my paralysis was getting longer and deeper. My out of body experiences really took off to a level which I've never experienced before. You know, the paralysis would start now where it was almost like this humming or buzzing in my head, and I could sense it coming on now, whereas before I couldn't. And that humming and buzzing sometimes would turn into like a loud ticking noise, almost like a clock. It's funny, as I started reading about this over the years, a lot of people were saying these same types of things. They would hear radio interference, they would hear this clicking or ticking, or this very heavy, like buzzing sound in their head, and that was like almost right when you would slip into a paralysis. And then after that paralysis, that's when the out of body would happen.
For some people that believe some of the stuff that you and I believe in, they describe it as a gate being opened, of sorts, or like a radio frequency almost,
Yeah.
to something else. We don't really know what that is.
And when I say radio frequency, I mean a true radio frequency
Yeah, I know.
from an old radio when you
Yeah.
were a kid turning the dial, where you would hear like snippets of like people talking in between the static, or a song being played, or an announcer doing a commercial. It was that clear. Like there was a radio in my head doing that. And I can never understand how that could be. Am I picking up signals in my brain? Um, so as I started reading more over the years about paralysis, sleep paralysis, and out of body experiences, it started. Then your mind starts working of what's really happening. You try to be as scientific as possible with it,
Yeah.
but there's always that feeling of like something beyond that you can't explain through science. Some entity there that is either, I don't know what it's trying to do, get inside of you or steal your soul. And over the years, the history of sleep paralysis goes back like, thousands of years now.
Yes.
And you start realizing where these words come from, and like we spoke before, like the Scandinavian or the Norwegian word for
Nightmare.
what was it? Nightmare.
Yeah, we
But
talked about nightmare, and I
but
think
but
Sorry about that. You go.
yeah, with
Yeah.
the actual pronunciation, I can't remember of mare.
Yeah. So I think if you put night and mare, if you take them apart, night is obviously the word for night and nighttime,
Uh
and
huh.
mare is Old English, and I think it goes back to Norse during the times when
Uh huh.
people from Scandinavia occupied the islands, occupied Britain, and mare comes from mare, like we
Yeah,
say.
Mara. That
Yeah.
was it. It was Mara.
For instance, in Norwegian, it's called mareritt, which is the Norwegian word for nightmare, and mare, I believe, is evil female spirit, like
Right.
a night witch of sorts.
Yeah, it was almost like they said it was a spirit that was sent to you to like torment or suffocate you,
Yeah,
from what I read. And then that's kind of scary, even in 2018.
of course.
And then thinking back to like 1,000 years ago, where people were having these same experiences that are very like, similar then as they are now. It's a bizarre state to be in, and so as like I was saying, as this kept happening, these feelings. Now I'm slipping into graduating to out of body experiences. I would be in this sleep paralysis mode, and the fright of the paralysis wasn't there anymore because I knew I'd eventually get out of it, and I would learn to like control my breathing, and sometimes even learn little tricks to like try to wiggle my feet or toes to get out of it. But as it started happening more frequently, I started having these feelings of like I'm leaving my body, and there were times I was in full paralysis, and I felt my body hovering above my physical form, and I would look down and I would see myself there. I would see my legs laying there, or my torso in the bed. And that happened maybe like 15 or 20 times. Um, and then it got serious. Um, with the out of body, and I was in the midst one night of this happening. I felt my body start to, it felt like I was actually leaving my physical form again, and this is where it starts sounding a little crazy. I'm laying there, I'm floating above my body, I'm focusing on my ceiling, wondering what's going on, and as I'm staring at my ceiling, it literally looks like something out of a movie. It transforms into the actual cosmos, like pure space, and moving. Like I'm seeing swirling images, star systems, almost like planets. I've never seen anything like this before. I thought I was in the midst of a dream, but I could still see the rest of my room around me. And I'm floating now towards this. I feel like I'm going into space with it. As my body is rising, I kid you not, a shadowy, dark arm reaches down from where, say, like the fan in my room was, the center of the ceiling, and the hand reaches down like it's trying to pull me up. And in that state, I'm like, I'm going with this.
Yeah.
So I reach up with my right hand, and I lock hands with this other black appendage, this dark shadowy arm, and now it's pulling me. And it's pulling me, I feel like, into space. And I start rising. I feel like I'm about 20 feet above my body now. And instantly, I was scared. And I'm like, if I go wherever this is pulling me, I'm not coming back.
No.
And I pulled back as hard as I could. And then I sat up in bed, put the lights on, screamed.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if I was taking a ride or if I was going to die in that moment. And I felt no pain, but I was like, this has to be what death is like. This is pulling me somewhere where I'm not supposed to be going. And that was the most real I've ever come, like the most real situation I've ever had with an out-of-body experience. And that's happened to me once like that, and about a month later it happened again, almost the same exact thing, and I reacted the same exact way by pulling back. Those two times it never came back to me like that again. With that type of like a vision and a feeling. And I started reading some books next about that.
There's quite a lot of literature on it.
Yeah. I think, I'm trying to remember the actual book that I read, but it almost gave you tips, and it was written in the 70s. It's an older book about like out-of-body experiences and lucid dreaming and remote viewing, which are all like ways to leave your body and travel either the world or other dimensions. And it sounds really like strange talking about that.
Yeah, this is super new age-ish, but there was a organization here in Sweden, or maybe it was in all of Scandinavia, in I know the late 80s and also in the 90s, that I think this is pretty much, this was their main focus, and they called it astral traveling. Like,
or they call it astral projection.
Okay.
Here, and the translation might be different for you, but yeah, that's the premise of it.
Yeah, so basically the gift. Some of these people believe that this is something that you can work with your senses and learn how to do it, whereas other people believe it as a form of gift, where you, in this case, you, Peter, have this gift, whereas other people won't. But then we have other people as well who refer to it as a fucking curse. You know what I mean?
Yeah, as a burden.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the way I look at it sometimes, as a burden, as well as like something that needs to be explored more. And I've spent some time reading and trying to get myself in this state, and for a while it was working, but I could never get beyond where I wanted to go with it. And then it stopped being something I was curious about after a while. I don't know if life got in the way or distractions got in the way, or if in reality I was a bit scared to go a bit further with it. So I kind of stopped pushing myself on some levels to go forward with it, and let it just be at the moment, you know.
But whether you like it or not, this is still happening.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yep. Getting back to just the paralysis and not the out of body experiences, like I said, it still happens so frequently. It could happen at the drop of a dime. I could be watching television late at night, and I can just go right into that state. Now, there's been times in the last year where I would be in the living room watching a movie late at night by myself, and I would fall right into deep paralysis, um, and I would feel like someone was in the room with me. I sensed at times my daughter standing next to me trying to wake me, but I knew it wasn't my daughter. Now I'm at this point where, like, are there spirits in this room trying to trick me and trick me into believing there's somebody else? Because I've experienced this where, say, Greta was trying to shake me free from a bad dream or a sleep, and I knew she was behind me,
And
and then I would,
Greta is your daughter, just so people
yes,
know. Yeah.
yep, and as soon as I realized it wasn't Greta, whatever that was trying to wake me transformed into another person, another entity, and I never would have a full vision of who they were, a physical form, but it was just a sense. Like I knew for a moment, maybe that was her. Oh no, it's definitely not her. And this thing is questioning me and trying to talk to me, and now it's trying to wake me, but it's trying to also fool me into believing it's a family member or a friend. And there was one night it happened. It just kept repeating, but it was always coming as a familiar presence, but it never fully formed into that. And then I realized, I was like, this is not someone I know. And that left me really like chilled to the bone a few times, because I don't know the actual motive, if there was one, if this was real. Why was this happening to me? Um, there were other times that I've woken up in the midst of a sleep paralysis. My eyes would be open and I would be upright, but everything I would see in the room was completely flipped upside down. So it was like I was living on the ceiling. The TV would be going and it was completely upside down. I would look at the door leaving the room and it was upside down. I would see my feet flipped the other way. And I don't know if that was a trick going on with my vision and my eyes, or I've never, it was just something new that was happening to me. And that's happened multiple times in the last year too. Um, I don't know, just a lot of strange occurrences, class.
Have you, during times of a lot of stress, work, and other things,
Bring it on.
has no, not like has there ever been times when you felt like fuck, I don't want to go to sleep now because I don't like I'm stressed
Yeah.
as it is. I don't want it to happen.
Yes. And especially if I woke awoke right from an experience. There's times I don't want to go back to bed, and I'll keep myself up
Yeah.
because it's almost too much on my like physical body to handle. Sometimes it's a tough way of there's no rest during
No.
this. You know, and
And
it's funny.
there's
Shannon knows, like, if I'm about to head into a state, she can sense it. She can hear my breathing change. She could, the way my eyes will flutter, and there's during these times I'm screaming for someone or her to wake me up, and she'll wake me, and I was like, "Did you hear me screaming?" She's like, "No, you weren't screaming, but you were." It was like almost like a muffled, like mouth, lips pursed tight, but trying to talk through that, and she sensed it, and she knows when it's happening, and always wakes me up through it.
I feel the thing is, and this is weird and obviously scary is that as far as you've gone, maybe the furthest you've gone is being in the ceiling and having, well, basically staring at the crossroads where something
Mm-hmm.
had the opportunity to drag you out from the room, right?
Yeah.
Drag you out from the living room,
Yep.
and then on top of that, having something or someone make you believe that it was Greta wanting to ask you something or wake you
Mm-hmm.
up or whatever. Well, if there are things or people or creatures, I mean, we don't know who has the ability to do the same thing, but
Mm-hmm.
they're much more in control of it. That would indicate that they would be able to come to you, but in a controlled fashion. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And if they're in it and they feel just as wide awake as you are at the time, then they could have different motives.
Right.
And also, they could probably come off any way they wanted to, or portray themselves as something that they're not.
Mm-hmm.
And that's scary.
Yeah, that's what leaves me with the questions of why,
Yeah.
you know, and what is the actual motive. It's, and like I said, I left it alone for a while of trying to push the boundaries,
Yeah.
and I feel soon I might try again to figure out where I'm going with it.
Yeah. Have you met people or talked to people that experience the same things?
Yeah,
Yeah.
quite a few, after speaking with people, but most of the time it's people that had like the random occurrence and not nearly as frequently as I have. I've yet to talk with somebody who has this constantly,
Yeah.
who's experienced everything from paralysis to out of body to sensing um, things in your room. I've yet to really talk to someone who has it full time, as I like to say.
Yeah. And or speak to someone who has gotten to the state where they think of it almost as a craft, like something they can control.
Hmm. I've had some friends who are well versed in like just out of body experiences and went to a lot of like it sounds crazy, but like workshops on it and how to achieve that state. And same friends who've given me books on it, and some of these guys, they relate some cool, really cool stories to me. Like friends that went together and they swear they've been in each other's dreams at the same time, and they can
Yeah.
recall the same exact things at that same exact time, at that same exact moment, of being together. And there's a there's a whole world to explore with that. I think.
There's a lot to say about dreaming. Last year, uh, I was I speak in my sleep sometimes, but
Hmm.
according to my wife, I always speak in Swedish. And for the first time ever, I was speaking in English,
Oh, wow.
talking to a friend of ours. And 2 days after that, I didn't speak. When I say friend of ours, I mean a friend of you and me, Peter.
Right.
And 2 days afterwards, my wife was speaking to him. Like, they talked online, and she was like, "Your lover boy, Klaus, talked to you in bed in English for the first time ever at like 2 in the morning." And he said, "Wow, that was during the exact same time as I had a minor heart attack." And
Wow.
he's in Boston, I should
Yep.
add. So it's weird.
Yeah. There's those connections, and they'll reach the farthest corners of the world.
Yeah.
You know, I believe in that. I definitely do.
So do I. And this is the Stockbury Dark, and almost hate myself for bringing this up, but there are people that have found us or will find us through the scene or the music, be it 100 Demons or Forced Reality or maybe even Shipwrecked. Have you ever touched on this and your experiences with 100 Demons in lyrics?
Lyrically, no.
Which
I
surprises me, I must
yeah,
admit.
I think there's been points in my life where I blocked it out. You know,
Yeah.
where I didn't even want to think about it. You know.
Because the gods
Uh,
know that we touch on a lot of dark shit
mm-hmm.
with the stuff that we do, but maybe this was just something that you, for different reasons, didn't want to.
Yeah, it's funny because in between Forced Reality and 100 Demons, there was another band I was in called Higher Force,
Yeah.
and I definitely touched on topics like that with that band. Um, but you know, that was just during a brief 2 year period when we actually would play and record. And with these other bands, no, I never really got into it lyrically. You know, with 100 Demons, I'm surprised I never did. But when
Yeah.
you think about it, we've only have 2 records with 100 Demons, and I've only written one of them. We've been playing, you know, the same 2 records for almost 25 years now.
Yeah.
So if there's ever a third record, I'm pretty sure I'll get into that topic. We'll see if that happens.
We will know
So,
what it was that you were talking about when there's a line in one song about all the windows being opened and the lights are on in an old fucking house where
yeah,
a man committed suicide.
you're right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I think we're pretty close to winding up here.
We are. We
We've
this
been
is this
talking
is
for a good amount of time.
yeah, we have. And now all you listeners out there, you will get at least a bit of a feel what we're going to talk about here on the Stockbury Dark. We're going to talk about the dark. So this is our first episode ever, and we're kind of happy
Hmm.
with it, aren't we?
Yeah, this
Yeah.
is you know, it's only going to get better from here. I'm really hoping everyone will give listening to us a shot. You know, and as we get more comfortable behind the microphone, and we bring you in other guests and other stories, you know, things are going to flow really well, and we hope we have got a lot of good interaction with our listeners. And
Yes.
you know, once we have the website up and running, you know, you can email us, tell us what you think of the show, the directions.
And you will be able to find us on the various social media that we will have addresses and everything up in a short period of time. And I would like to add something else. These first episodes, like this one and the next one, is me and Peter talking about our experiences, and we will come back to that in the future. But this show is not going to be about us. We do, however, feel that this comes with touching on these subjects and talking about this stuff comes with a big amount of responsibility, and it's not in our place to ask people and talk with people about these things without going first in a way. So in that old, like there's this old military strategy thing where the officer will always be the first one over the hill and the last one back.
Mhm.
That's kind of how I feel about these first episodes.
Yeah, that
It's our duty to go first, right?
it is. We're
Yeah.
going to dive head first, and we're going to be the last to leave, and we're going to
Yeah.
guide you. We're going to guide everyone through it on this whole journey. Thanks so much, everyone, for listening, and we'll be
Do
back really soon with our next episode.
do we have any shout outs before we go?
Well, yeah, we're going to thank
Sean,
Sean Martin definitely for
Jeff.
helping us. Sean, Jeff Lambert, who's going to be, you know, helped with our logo design and artwork for the website. Ryan White, who is composing a lot of the music for our podcast. Our wives for caging the beast and helping us technically through a lot of these things because we're not the most savvy.
For keeping the kids quiet.
Yeah, that as well too.
Yeah.
And as we go along, we're gonna have a long list of credits
We will
to the show because there's a lot of hands that are going to be helping us get to where we want to go with this, and we're really excited for what's coming up.
We are very, very excited, and the scary thing is that we don't really know where this will take us. Mm-hmm. We only know that it will take us further into the darkness.
Right? You're right about that.
Yeah. You've been listening to the Stockbury Dark. Thank you very, very much. This was Klaus from Shipwrecked and Peter of 100 Demons.
Thank you guys so much, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.